G'day, John O'Brake here, and we're looking at DISC. And so to now we've kind of unpacked what is DISC. We've looked at DISC in separate videos, and what are the things they bring, what are the kind of the shadow sides to that. Now we're going to kind of step into some of the conversations. Now, when I kind of walk through DISC, the journey of self-awareness is massively important, and we already unpacked that, why we need to even do some of this stuff in the first place. But then how that leads into the way I am productive, the way I lead my team, how I bring conflict, how I have just general conversations with people, how do we get stuff done, how do I coach and guide and lead people. All these things become massively important. So we're going to kind of just step into a little bit more of DISC now, and all of these things we would unpack either in a full day, 2-day workshop, or over a period of a year if we're doing regular training with a team of people. So we're going to look at a few things now. We're going to kind of talk about, every style, every person leaves an emotional wake, right? So you think about like a glassy lake, everything's still, and a boat comes racing through the middle, and there's boats moored on the sides. Well, what happens is eventually the wave gets out to those boats and they all start bobbing up and down and moving around. And there's some places environmentally where they'll say you have to go slowly so that your wake doesn't, destroy the bank of the river or the lake or whatever it might be. And so there's different things because of the wake it leaves, because of the damage or the impact it has on something else. Well, this is the same with emotions, okay? Now, we're not talking about emotional intelligence here. We're just unpacking this from the perspective of DISC. There is a whole other conversation around emotional quotient or, emotional intelligence, EIQ, those sorts of things. So what we're going to look at is just each of these styles, and we're going to just start to unpack, some of these things. So again, we'll start with the dominant. And so remember, the dominant is all about problems and challenges. And so they need challenges to solve. Okay, so if they're not getting that, they're either just going to be a pain in the neck, or they may even just leave because they need to be somewhere more challenging. But they're very driven by those challenges and problems to solve, and they love authority. So even it's one of those challenges. Like if you hire a D and they're an intern, well, how do you start to give them some authority so they feel like they can grow and have a trajectory? When we look at the emotions of a D, the emotions are anger and impatience. Okay, so these guys are the ones that they're not the only ones, but they're most susceptible to, being very upfront, almost seem quite aggressive in the way they do things. And quite impatient. Come on, I need it done now. Let's get it done. Hurry up. And so part of that comes from the fact is that they fear being taken advantage of. So everybody has needs. Everybody behaves in a certain way through certain emotions. And then everybody has primal fears going on in their world. Fear of not being loved, fear of being rejected, fear of getting it wrong, fear of failure, fear of success, all these sorts of things. We've got a lot of primal fears going on that we need to pay more attention to. So we're just going to touch on some of those with each of these styles. So they fear being taken advantage of. So if you're dealing with a D, and we'll talk about this in another video, if you're dealing with a D, there are certain things you're going to bring, right? So one of the things that most people feel challenged, because the D is so strong, they feel challenged to actually bring a strong, like if I confront them with my own strength and my own authority, they're going to actually hate me for that. Well, it's funny because you talk to any D and they'll go, oh no, we love that. In fact, I feel like I can build a rapport with that person. So, for the S's in particular, that's highly challenging because they're the ones that are least likely to bring this. Let's look at the I for a minute. So the I needs social relationships. It needs connection. You cannot put an I in their own room or in their own home or out in the woods somewhere. They will go crazy, and they'll, if they're out in the woods, they might drive the bears and the squirrels crazy. They need a friendly environment. They want positive, they like a positive culture. They're, fun and positivity is very high on their agenda, and they're going to go and find that either with you or with someone else. So their emotions are quite optimistic. They're quite verbose about being optimistic, and they try and some of it can be fake, by the way, but they try and put on this kind of brave face, and but very, very trusting. So when that trust is broken, they deeply, deeply feel hurt. And so that sort of stuff is really important to them. Their greatest fear is, you might call it FOMO, but it's basically fear of being left out. And it's really funny, like you talk to an I and they'll totally get this. It's like, you know, they'll see somebody going into, like their boss is going into a room with one of their colleagues. Their first thought is, it's about me and it's bad. It's totally irrational, right? Well, it might be, but you know, but it's usually totally irrational. But it's just the way they think. I still think like that. I see two people go into a room and go, it's about me and it's bad. But then, I mean, I'm smart enough to catch myself now, but it's that fear of being left out and lack of social approval. So they won't show up to something if they feel like they're not going to be able to connect with people, or, you know, and so, or otherwise they'll just blatantly insert themselves. Moving on to the stabilizer or the steady, where we're talking about that balance between pace and consistency. These folks need systems. They need a framework to operate in. If you're not giving them frameworks, don't ask them to build them. You've got to give it to them. So you might need your conscientious folk to help with that. So they need a team. They're not great at working on their own. They would prefer to be knowing that they're contributing to a team. And of course, they're going to want to know that their environment is stable. Is it going to be here for a while? Are we doing okay? They can really sense the mood of a business. So their emotions almost seem like no emotions at all. Okay, so it's like a patience, a non-expression, you know, it's this, it almost seems quite plain. I mean, they're friendly, right? So you don't probably notice it as much. But I tell you what, when they blow up, they really blow up, but it's usually after a long series of events and things going on. Their greatest fear is sudden change. I'm going to come in tomorrow and everything will be different. And I'm terrified of that. So any hint, any whiff of sudden change or any hint of change coming at all is going to really destabilize them. So remember, they're stabilizers. They want stability. They want security. And so you've got to provide that. Let's look at the conscientious as the last one here in terms of some of the things that they need and their emotions. Conscientious need rules to follow. It's really simple. I mean, they want to know, what are the rules? What are the parameters? How are we going to do this? What's the data maybe that backs that up, or how can I find that data? And they then want that data to analyze, because their whole success is built on successfully achieving an outcome because of the data, because of the smarts that they deploy. And so their emotions are more around fear, generic fear, concern, mistrust, all those sorts of things. And so because it's kind of like a world of, well, prove it, right? And so it's a real challenge for them, but they fear the most being criticized, okay? So if you're criticizing your C's, just realize the damage you're doing, because what you're saying is your data's not good enough, your smarts are not good enough, and you've got to bring a better way of connecting with them and helping them understand that, and always correlate it back to accuracy, to consistency, and all those sorts of things. When you do your DISC assessment, you don't get a 0 in any of the letters. What typically happens is you'll have one dominant, then you'll have a second one that is least high, if not, close to your primary, and then the other two will be playing somewhere. So in my case, for example, my I is extremely high, my D is quite high, my C is kind of 50-50, 45-50, and my S is quite low, which is really funny because I've had to train myself to be a good listener. But so understand that you are a combination. Now, what tends to happen is, let's say you're an ID, I'm an ID. So what'll happen is I tend to lead with my I. So all the stuff we talked about with I. But in certain situations, so maybe when I'm completely relaxed, my D does go up a little bit. When I'm feeling, and the opposite, when I'm feeling really stressed, I'll tend to go to the D on its own, and I'll become more dominant and more probably aggressive rather than assertive in my behaviors. The conscientious kind of backs up some of the stuff because I've been in business, because I'm a coach, because I've advised people and need to know numbers and processes and things. Whilst it's not a natural move for me, I've learned a lot of that stuff and learned to appreciate it too. Learn to appreciate the pragmatic side of life. A lot of the people I coach are highly pragmatic. And so the C then plays in, and there are plenty of times where it's like, you know what, I just need this just to stay on the tracks it's on. Rinse and repeat. I need a team that are just going to execute. We just got to get this done. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders who are constantly jumping from one thing to the next. And so just bringing some of that stabilizer journey back into their world, like, okay, stop. Let's think through this. What parameters do you need? What are the processes you need in place? How do you need to control some of this? How do you bring some of that stability back into your world? So just understanding here that there isn't just one type. You're not just a D, you're not just an I. These are, your highest one tends to be the one you lead with, natural or adaptive. The secondary one tends to be the one that influences it the most, but also comes out to play maybe under stress or in some of those more tense conditions. And then the others have their day. And perfectly honest, if you took that DISC assessment in 3 months' time, it might give you some slight different numbers depending on the kind of day you're having. And so it's not that they're inaccurate, it's just how it works. And so the whole point is that we have all these different styles, we have all these different combinations. We started this video talking about adapting and flexing your style. Like, this is now where the rubber hits the road with this stuff. It's not just good enough that I know my style. I become amazing, great, next level when I realize that if I have my style, everybody else has theirs. So I need to know at least my intimate team. I need to know them, my family or whatever. I need to know that group so I can be the mature one, so I can be the better leader and connect with them in a way they want to be connected with. Okay, we've talked about this platinum rule over and over now. And so this is some of the stuff when we start to look at adaptability, we start to look at the natural way we bring things. Adaptability is more important than anything else in successful relationships. It's not, you have to do it my way. If you're a D and you're saying you have to do it my way, you're an unhealthy D. Same with C, I, and S, by the way. If anything you're doing is like, well, bad luck, that's how I am, that's unhealthy. And so this is where, and this video is a little longer, but this is where it's really important that we understand that these things are sitting there so I can understand me. Oh, and by the way, you've done the same assessment. We can now talk to each other and understand that. I can maybe even have some reminders up on my desk. This is how I prefer to be connected with. If you're the leader of that person, it's your job to flex to your people, not the other way around. Now, obviously the natural outcome of that is that they'll want to do likewise, but understand, if you're the leader, it's your responsibility. So that's where we'll leave that one today. I think, there's so much more we can talk about in terms of adaptability. So many more things we can think about. But we'll unpack maybe some more of that in the next video.